Hi guys. So right now I'm going to tell you a little story about cell structure and cell function. Now, believe it or not, different cells do different things. Mind blown, right? And so because they do different things, they have different shapes because all function is determined by structure. Right? And so, one of the major ways in which cells are different based upon their function is by their organelle composition. Right? So, the difference in shape isn't necessarily on the macro level, well, none of it's on the macro level because they're cells, they're tiny. On the overarching structural components of the cell, because a lot of the shape differences are inside. But that being said, a lot of cells do have vastly different outside shapes, right? And so if we look at a neuron versus a liver cell, right, they look very, very, very different because they have very different functions. The neuron, first and foremost, has a very unique shape amongst all cells. It has the soma, and then it has this long axon tail, which ends in synapses, right? And so, like that in and of itself is just a crazy shape. So it's a great example of how structure and function come together. When we look at the nervous system, we will look at neurons in depth, right? But not at the moment. And then if we look at the liver cell's job is to secrete different materials and detoxify our body, right? And so the liver cell structure reflects that. It has membranes that are good for getting stuff out. It has junctions that create these little tubes, right? Because it's dumping bile into the tube so that it can get into the stomach. And so, just even on the outside structure, a neuron looks very different from a liver cell because they do different things. If you zoom in into the inside of the cell, you'll also see that their organelle composition is vastly different. Right? Because the liver cells focused on secretion of different materials, there's going to be a very large endoplasmic reticulum with a very large section of smooth ER. There's going to be very large or very not complex, a great number of Golgi apparatus within there, right? Because the Golgi is responsible for packaging those secretions. Right? Whereas if you look inside of a neuron, you're going to see a lot of mechanisms that are responsible for the signaling cascades, right? Because the way that they're triggered, which we'll talk about in cellular communication, has to do with receiving a chemical signal, passing that signal along, affecting the change, and then it passes that down its axon. Right? And so the neuron doesn't need nearly as much endoplasmic reticulum or nearly as much of the Golgi apparatus because it doesn't have the same function. You can simplify it and even look at cells that are vastly different from one another, such as an animal cell and a plant cell. Right? Their structures are so different because our whole macro form and function is so different. Right? As animals, we have a cell membrane, right? And our structure is held up by different types of tissues. Right? We have skeletal tissue, we have bones, we have muscles, things that can hold us together even though we're gooey. The plants don't have any of those kind of tissues that hold them together, and so their cells have these cell walls that are rigid, and their cell walls provide them with their structure and keeps them tough, right? And so when you look at the cell wall works together with the central vacuole, which is a big vacuole in the middle of a plant cell. You fill it up with water, it pushes against the cell wall gets nice and turgid and keeps the plant up nice and stiff, right? And so the fact that we have muscles and bones and plants don't, right? You can see that reflected within the cell structure itself. Right? And then you have cute, adorable little bacteria, which are little tiny guys compared to us, and they have like a sugar coating around them that keeps them safe from different kinds of environmental detriments because they're just one cell. Right? And so if that one cell dies, he's gone. That's it. His life is over. If one of our cells dies, it's no big deal. So we don't have those kind of protective coatings on our cells, right? And so depending upon whatever it is that the cell needs to do or whatever life function is performing, the cells are going to have different structures. And primarily, or not primarily, but more interestingly, different organelle compositions. Muscle cells are going to have more mitochondria because they use a lot of energy. Things like that. Cool? That's it. Bye.